Imagine this. What if Emma Bovary and Don Quixote chatted over coffee? What would they talk about? Their dreams? Their disappointments? Or maybe their daring escape from the clutches of reality? They might not be able to meet, but we're uniquely bringing these two iconic characters together today. We'll jump into the lives of Flaubert and Cervantes, the geniuses behind these creations, and unfold the stories of their famous characters. We're set to uncover the surprising similarities between these two stories. How do they challenge our understanding of fantasy and reality? How do their adventures reflect our own life's twists and turns? Whether you're a literature buff or just love a good story, there's something here to spark your imagination. Oh, and if you haven't hit that subscribe button, it's a good time. Now let's jump right in. Let's turn the spotlight to a man who changed the face of literature with his incredible imagination. Meet Miguel de Cervantes. Cervantes was born in Spain in 1547. He led a life as colorful and adventurous as the characters in his books. He was a soldier, a captive, and even a tax collector. Talk about wearing a lot of hats. His world was full of change. The Renaissance was in full swing, bringing new ideas about art, science, and culture. And Cervantes? He was right in the middle of it all. But let's talk about what really put Cervantes on the map. Don Quixote. This book was a game changer. In fact, it's often called the first modern novel. Why, you ask? Don Quixote broke the mold. It was funny, deep, and turned the idea of a hero on its head. Picture Spain in the early 17th century. Our hero, Don Quixote, is not your average knight. In fact, he's not a knight at all. He's a regular guy who's read so many stories about brave knights and grand adventures that he decides, hey, that's the life for me. So he puts on some old armor, grabs a lance, and calls himself a knight. And along with his trusty sidekick, Sancho Panza, he sets off on a quest to do good and bring justice to the world. Sounds like fun, right? But here's the twist. Don Quixote's adventures are, well, let's say, a bit out of touch with reality. He fights windmills, thinking they're giants, mistakes inns for castles, and believes ordinary peasants are enchanted nobles. It's a wild ride. Through all this, Don Quixote is driven by his big heart and wild imagination. He's a dreamer who sees the world not as it is, but as he believes it should be. It's also about the power of dreams, the value of kindness, and the question of what's real and what's not. And that's what makes him so special. Cervantes, the author, was pretty special too. He played with reality and fiction in ways that no one had before. And guess what? We're still talking about it hundreds of years later. Next up, let's meet a literary star who shook the world with his bold writing style. Say hello to Gustave Flaubert. Flaubert was born in 1821 in France. His life was a bit of a roller coaster. He studied to be a lawyer, but guess what? His heart was all in for writing. He battled health issues and faced some pretty tough times, but he never stopped writing. He lived during an exciting time in France. It was the 19th century and big changes were happening, from revolutions to new artistic movements. And Flaubert, he was right there, soaking it all in. Let's talk about his magnum opus, Madame Bovary. This was a groundbreaker. It's often seen as the start of literary realism. And why is that special? Let me tell you. Flaubert changed the game by focusing on real, everyday life in his writing. He made ordinary characters like Emma Bovary extraordinary. He showed us their hopes, their dreams, and yes, even their flaws. The story is set in a small town in France. Emma Bovary is a young woman with a big imagination and a taste for romance. She's married to Charles Bovary, a kind but, let's say, not so exciting doctor. Emma's life seems normal, but she wants more. She's been reading loads of romantic novels and dreams of a life full of passion, luxury, and excitement, starkly contrasting her everyday routine. Remind you of anyone we've discussed already? Emma's search for this dream life leads to a series of not-so-great decisions. She gets involved in 2 love affairs and starts spending money she doesn't have, chasing the life she's always dreamed about. But here's the catch. Reality isn't like novels. Emma's actions have consequences and things start to spiral. The story shows us the clash between dreams and reality and how chasing fantasies can lead us down a rocky path. Emma Bovary is a complicated character. She's a dreamer, but she's also a rebel in her own way. She challenges the norms of her time, seeking happiness in a world that doesn't offer many choices for women like her. Madame Bovary isn't just Emma's story. She illustrates the struggles of finding fulfillment and the dangers of letting fantasies take over. Flaubert gives us a character so real and flawed that we can't help but feel for her. Flaubert's writing makes us look at the world around us differently, and that's why he's a big deal in literature. His work, especially Madame Bovary, inspires and challenges readers and writers alike. Getting back to the actual point of this video, there are many similarities between Don Quixote and Madame Bovary. So let's take a look at them. Let's talk about one of the most fascinating parts of these stories, the tug of war between idealism and reality. Both Madame Bovary and Don Quixote give us a front row seat to what happens when dreams collide with the real world. Emma Bovary's living in a small town, feeling trapped in a life that doesn't match the glamorous, passionate world in her books. Flaubert writes, "She longed to travel or to go back to her convent. She wanted to die, and she wanted to live in Paris." This line perfectly captures her inner conflict. And then there's our man Don Quixote. He's so enchanted by tales of chivalry that he decides to become a knight. Cervantes tells us, finally, from so little sleeping and so much reading, his brain dried up and he went completely out of his mind. It's a humorous but poignant way to show us how he's lost in his fantasies. Both Emma and Don Quixote create these fantasy worlds as an escape. They're not just daydreaming, they're actually trying to live out these fantasies. But as they discover, life's not a romance novel or a chivalric tale. In Madame Bovary, Emma's attempts to recreate her book-inspired dreams lead to heartbreak and debt. And in Don Quixote, our brave knight's adventures often end in comical, sometimes painful mishaps. These stories teach us something timeless: the dangers of losing ourselves in illusions. While it's human to dream and seek more from life, there's a delicate balance between aspiration and reality. Ultimately, Emma and Don Quixote learn that reality always finds a way to catch up with us, no matter how fast we chase our dreams. Let's explore a key part of our two stories, the tragic flaws of our main characters. Both Madame Bovary and Don Quixote show us how delusions can lead us to a downfall, no matter how well-intentioned. In Madame Bovary, Emma's constant pursuit of a fantasy life blinds her to the realities of her situation. Flaubert writes, "Her heart was just like those ladders you see in gardens, leaning against the tree of knowledge." This line beautifully captures how her desires keep pushing her further from reality. Her romantic ideals, fueled by the novels she reads, lead her into reckless choices, debts, affairs, and ultimately her tragic end. Her dreams are like a double-edged sword, giving her joy and leading her astray. Now, Don Quixote's flaw is his unwavering belief in the chivalric ideals of his beloved books. Cervantes describes him as so caught up in reading that he spent his nights from sunset to sunrise and his days from dawn to dusk poring over them. His obsession turns his world upside down. His misadventures are funny, yet sad, like attacking windmills he believes to be giants. They show a man so lost in his imagination that he can't see the world as it truly is. This leads to trouble and eventually a heartbreaking return to reality. Both characters see how their delusions create a world where they can't survive. Emma's and Don Quixote's stories are cautionary tales about the cost of not recognizing our limits and the dangers of losing touch with reality. While their journeys are filled with whimsy and heartache, they teach us a powerful lesson: the importance of balancing our dreams with the world around us. Now, let's take a look at how Don Quixote and Madame Bovary do more than just tell stories. They actually give us a sneak peek into the societies they were written in, critiquing class, romance, and the role of literature in media. Starting with Don Quixote, Cervantes uses humor and satire to poke fun at the class system of the time. He brings a nobleman and a peasant together as companions, challenging the rigid class structures. Cervantes writes, "The truth may be stretched thin, but it never breaks, and it always surfaces above lies, as oil floats on water." This line cleverly hints at how he views societal norms and truth. The novel also questions the impact of literature on people's minds. Don Quixote's adventures directly result from him getting lost in his books. Cervantes makes us think about what we read and consume and how it can shape our perceptions of the world. Moving to Madame Bovary, Flaubert offers a critical look at romance and the constraints of societal expectations, especially for women. The novel also critiques the class system, showing how Emma's aspirations and societal pressures lead her to make devastating choices. Her pursuit of a higher social status and romantic ideals, heavily influenced by the popular novels of her time, highlights the disconnect between real life and the fantasy sold by literature and media. In their unique ways, both novels use their characters and plots to illuminate the issues of their times. They make us question our own societal norms and the impact of the media we consume. And there we have it. Today, we've explored the charismatic worlds of Madame Bovary and Don Quixote. We've seen how both Emma Bovary and Don Quixote escape into their own fantasies to deal with the dissatisfaction in their lives. We examined their tragic flaws, Emma's unfulfilled dreams, and Don Quixote's chivalric delusions, and how these led to their downfalls. We also looked at the social critiques in these novels, revealing insights about class, romance, and the influence of literature and media. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you see other parallels between Madame Bovary and Don Quixote that we didn't cover? How do these classic stories echo in today's world? Drop your ideas and opinions in the comments below. And if you enjoyed our literary exploration today, don't forget to hit the like button. Want more dives into the world of literature? Remember to subscribe to Verse and Vision and ring that notification bell to stay updated. Thank you so much for watching. Keep dreaming, keep reading, and until next time, stay curious.